Have you noticed how many completely unrelated things seem to be quietly breaking all at the exact same time? You go down to the local supermarket and your weekly grocery bill is noticeably higher than it was last year. You open your mail and your home insurance company calmly announces they are leaving your region entirely. You turn on the evening news and a major highway has literally buckled in the middle of summer. And just a few days later, a local reservoir drops so low that entire towns face strict water restrictions. Meanwhile, the power grid flickers off during a heatwave precisely when people need the electricity most. If you watch the news, these are almost always reported as separate, unfortunate, and isolated events. A temporary supply chain issue, a local infrastructure failure, a corporate insurance dispute. But if you look closely at the mechanics of our world, they aren't separate problems at all. What does an insurance agent in Florida, a grocery bill in London, and a broken road in Texas actually have in common? What is the hidden thread tying them together? They are all symptoms of the exact same underlying mechanism. It's a mechanism that is completely invisible, yet it quietly dictates how you live your everyday life. Every physical and financial system you rely on to survive was built on top of one massive, unspoken assumption. And that assumption is that modern civilization was built during one of the most remarkably stable climates in all of human history. And right now, that core assumption is quietly beginning to change. To understand why everything is suddenly under stress, you have to look at how human history actually unfolded. For most of Earth's history, the global climate swung wildly. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and incredibly harsh. But about 10,000 years ago, something incredible happened. The global climate suddenly settled down. We entered a geological era known as the Holocene, a period of unusual, almost boring environmental stability. This prolonged stability is the primary reason you and I are sitting here today. Because environmental stability creates a unique superpower, it creates the ability to predict the future. When the seasons behave the exact same way, century after century, you can finally stop moving. You can invent agriculture because you know exactly when the spring rains are going to arrive. You can build permanent cities on the coast because you know exactly where the sea level sits. Human civilization wasn't the result of sudden brilliance. It was the result of long-term predictability. The engineers, farmers, and city planners of the past weren't short-sighted or lazy when they built our world. They were incredibly rational. They looked at the historical weather records and designed our world around them. When you build a bridge, you look at the worst flood in the last 100 years, and you build the bridge just a little bit higher than that historical watermark. When you design a city's storm drain system, you calculate the heaviest rainfall on record. And you size the underground pipes to handle exactly that much water, plus a small safety margin. When you start an insurance company, you look at decades of historical property damage, and you use that data to calculate exactly how much a monthly premium should cost to keep the company safe. Every inch of our modern world was meticulously optimized around these historical patterns. The sizes of our reservoirs, the thickness of our power cables, the depth of our skyscraper foundations. They are all physical, tangible manifestations of the weather data from the last 100 years. And this system made perfect sense, as long as the future looked exactly like the past. But what happens when the future stops behaving like the past? The most disruptive thing happening right now isn't just that average temperatures are slowly rising. It's that the historical record is no longer a reliable guide for what happens tomorrow. The fundamental assumption of prediction has been broken. And because civilization depends entirely on prediction, every system built on that assumption is suddenly operating outside of its original design parameters. This creates a fascinating, if highly stressful, chain reaction across the entire planet. A changing climate leads to changing assumptions, and changing assumptions ultimately force a total system redesign. If exploring the invisible systems that run our world changes how you see things, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It tells us to keep uncovering them. Now let's look at the evidence. You can see this hidden redesign happening all around you right now if you know where to look. Take a normal asphalt road. Asphalt isn't just black sludge. It's a carefully engineered recipe. Engineers mix it specifically for the historical temperature range of a specific local region. But when a heat wave breaks those historical records, the asphalt literally melts, and the road buckles under the pressure. The exact same rule applies to railways. Steel train tracks naturally expand in the heat. They are installed with small gaps between them to accommodate historical maximum summer temperatures. When it gets hotter than history expected, the steel expands too much, the gaps close, and the tracks warp. In our cities, vital water infrastructure is suddenly flying blind. Storm drains were designed for 100-year storms, storms so historically rare they theoretically happen once a century. But when the climate shifts, a 100-year storm starts happening every 5 years. The pipes underground didn't shrink. The mathematical assumption that dictated their size is just wrong now. Look at our power grids. Transformers are massive metal boxes that route electricity to your neighborhood. They generate an immense amount of heat, and they rely on the cooler nighttime air to bring their temperatures down. When summer nights remain unusually warm, the transformers never cool off. They overheat, and the grid fails. Or consider the entire insurance industry. Insurance is basically just the math of historical probability. But when historical probability goes out the window, actuaries literally cannot price risk anymore. And an insurance company that can't predict risk simply packs up its business and leaves the state entirely. Even global supply chains depend on predictable river levels to move heavy barges of grain and electronics. When those rivers drop below historical minimums, the barges stop moving and the price of your goods goes up. None of these systems are broken because of incompetence or a lack of engineering skill. They are breaking because civilization wasn't built for today's climate. It was built for yesterday's. But here is the most important, optimistic thing to understand about human civilization. We are the ultimate adapting machine. We don't just sit there and watch our systems break. We are already in the middle of the greatest infrastructure redesign in human history. Agricultural scientists are rapidly breeding new, heat-resistant crops that can survive unpredictable rain patterns. City planners are tearing up concrete and building sponge cities with special materials that absorb sudden floods. Engineers are pouring entirely new blends of asphalt and leaving wider gaps in railway steel. Power grids are being completely modernized with decentralized solar panels and massive battery networks, so that when one part of the system goes down, the rest of the neighborhood can survive independently. Water recycling systems are being installed to capture every single drop of moisture in drought-prone areas. We are rewriting the engineering standards, updating the building codes, and replacing the physical materials. We are actively redesigning civilization for an entirely new set of baseline assumptions. When you look closely at the news today, all those seemingly separate problems finally make sense. The rising grocery bills, the buckling roads, the rolling power outages. This was never really a story about climate change or rising temperatures. It was a story about the invisible assumptions that human civilization was originally built upon. When the world is completely stable, we naturally build systems that rely on that stability. And when those baseline assumptions change, civilization simply has to change with them. But if historical climate quietly shaped every single physical system we've ever built, what happens to the most fragile and complex system of all? What happens to the one system that every civilization in history has depended on most? Food. If you want to see how that system is being entirely redesigned, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.